Hi, Tom from bknutrition.com, and today I want to talk about getting in the right training zone for the maximum amount of muscle hypertrophy and muscle growth that you can get from your workouts. Now, what I mean by this is not the sniffing smelling salts, getting hit on the back, shouting at yourself, or hitting your head on the wall, or whatever you do to psych yourself up for a big lift. No, what I want to talk about is the right training zone for the right amount of weight that you can lift, the right amount of volume that you want to lift with, the right amount of reps, the right amount of sets, and the right amount of training frequency. This is what I call getting into the progress zone. And unfortunately, being a coach for, I think 24 years, no, I'm a coach for about 20 years, and I've been a gym owner for 11 years, and I've been in bodybuilding for 25 years maybe. So I've had a lot of experience and seen a lot of people doing a lot of weird things. And over the years, I've seen different let's say trends come and go, where people are doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things to maximize their muscle growth. But the thing that stays the same all the way through is getting this right amount of frequency, reps, weights, training volume. But also key to this is not getting injured, because as soon as you get injured, that's it, you're out for weeks, months, however long. Now, I've had experience of this before myself when I was getting ready for a bodybuilding competition, and I actually got some really amazing lifts for a few days in a row, and I got a little bit let's say ego driven in terms of what I was doing with my weights, and I ended up with a disc bulge in C6, C7 on my spine, which actually made me lose about half the muscle on my right side, and it took me about 4 years to get that back. And the disc bulge, I'm still left with an injury now, where you can see where my back is not as good on my right side as it is on my left side, and the same with my triceps. And that all came because I didn't stay in what I call the progress zone. I went into the ego zone and dipped into it a little bit too much. So the purpose of this video is A, to give you an idea about where you should be in terms of your reps, sets, weights, volume, etc. for muscle growth, but also to give you a little bit of a sort of practical advice and maybe a warning not to push it too much and end up potentially sidelined for 3 to 4 years. Because my injury put me out for... It put me out for a competition, effectively dead. I couldn't compete anymore because of the injury. And I only competed again when I filmed Prep the Series, which is available on this channel, with my friend Paul Scarborough about sort of 5 years later, when we both decided we were going to do another show, one last show. And yeah, we filmed the series for that. So I didn't go back to competition really seriously at all. It was only to film that documentary that we did it. So and this is the thing, is that when people do get injured and it puts them out, but it also affects their mental well-being, their confidence, their associations with food. Because if you can't train and you can't get to the gym to burn off any energy and to sort of get motivated in terms of looking better, you end up sliding down that slope into eating worse as well. And I know, because I've been there and I've had clients who've done all that as well. So let's talk about the 3 zones. So the first zone you have is the comfort zone. Now, if you're listening on the podcast, you won't see this, but there's a little picture onto my right here, which is showing a graph. And the graph is, on the one side you've got weights, and the other side you weight lifted, and the other side you've got injury risk. Now, when you're at low weight lifted, you're obviously at low injury risk. Now, this is weight lifted comparatively what's relatively light for you. So what's relatively light for me might be relatively heavy for someone else, and vice versa. So what we're talking about here is if you lift very low weight, or a comfortable weight which you can lift very easily for, say, 20 reps, you're unlikely to get an injury there, unless you mess about with the form, unless for some reason you're sloppy with the form. But the problem with that is that there's no challenge. Although it's a very safe way to train, it's a decent way for maintenance and potentially rehabilitation, it's not a way that's going to give you the muscular progress, the muscular growth that you want. And unfortunately, I do see a lot of people in gyms doing this. They just go and do the same workout all the time. They do the same weight all the time. They're never looking to challenge themselves. They're more there for the gym for sort of maybe a social aspect, which is fine, if that's what you're there for. But I think the majority of those people, if I ask them, if I say, are you looking to grow more muscle, they would probably say yes, because they're in the gym training weights. But they're not conditioning themselves to do that. They're staying very much in their comfort zone. And this is where I was after I had my injury. because I was so afraid of getting another injury, because it was so debilitating, this slip disc that I had. It was so debilitated that I was so afraid of getting another injury. So I was very safe with what I was doing. I wasn't challenging myself. And although I was maintaining the muscle I had, I wasn't really pushing myself forward. And because I wasn't seeing any progress in the mirror and seeing any improvements, that started to affect me mentally in terms of my self-confidence. So the comfort zone is okay if you're looking to, say, do warm-ups, or you're looking to, say, rehabilitate, or you're just having a bit of downtime from your main gym program, a little bit of let's say recomping or whatever. You're just looking to sort of take a bit of time off, but still maintain it. That's fine, but be aware if you are doing that, your muscle growth is going to be very low. And I would say that this sort of level of lifting is around about sort of 30-40% of what your 1 rep max would be. Now, when I talk about 1 rep max, that's if you got into the gym and lifted that one weight with proper form, your absolute maximum you could do for one rep. That's what we're comparing against. And most people will never ever do that test, so you've got to take it a little bit of, okay, what would that be if I push myself, and then work out from there what your weights are. I wouldn't recommend going to the gym and doing, say, a 1 rep max of bicep curls. You probably snap your arm. Same for things like leg extensions, that sort of thing. But you will know potentially what your maximum weight is going to be if you were to, say, do that. So you got to think about, if you're in the comfort zone, you're normally about 30-40% on average of what we'd lift for this maximal weight. So you can do a lot of reps, very easy, very safe form, but you're not going to progress. Then on the other side of things, we have the ego zone. So that is where you're lifting the maximum amount of weight you can possibly lift, but because you're doing that, your injury risk goes up. And what you generally tend to find with this is that unless you're, say, a serious powerlifter or strength athlete who knows where your limits are, you'll generally find that in the gym, and I've seen this in my gym, I've seen the gyms all around the country where I've been there, and people on Instagram, all that sort of thing, what they do is they push the weight too much because they're looking to satisfy an ego-driven sense of, I'm the biggest guy in the gym. And you'll see these people all the time slamming the weights down, screaming loudly, using absolutely awful form to lift this weight, and maybe not a lot of range of motion. But they're getting this weight up, and that's all they care about. But the problem is, if you're a bodybuilder and you're looking to, say, get the maximum amount of muscle, then that sort of training is not going to be beneficial for building maximum amount of muscle, because we need a certain amount of reps and weight and a certain amount of range of motion and a certain amount of volume in order to elicit maximum muscle growth. So actually these people, when they're doing that, when they're doing that sort of training and satisfying the ego that they're the biggest guy in the gym, what they're actually doing is limiting how much muscular growth they're going to get. But what they do at the same time is they start ramping up the liability for injury, the risk for injury. And I've seen this a lot over the years I've been training and coaching, where people just push that envelope too much. They forget that they're out for muscle growth, and they start getting into how much can I lift. And I've seen this with competitive bodybuilders as well. And I've been guilty of this in the past. That's how I got injured. You forget where you are. You forget in terms of, what am I trying to do here? Am I trying to build the most muscle and lose as much body fat to be in as best shape as possible? Or am I trying to be a strength athlete? Because the training is completely different. Although you're still lifting weights and you're still doing similar exercises, the training, the way you need to focus your workout is completely different. And unfortunately, I see people who are, say, bodybuilding mindset trying to do strength type training, and that always ends up in injury. With my injury, I was doing a bench press. I did 180 kilos. I did 4 reps. Decent form, but I'm not used to lifting that sort of weight. I wasn't used to lifting that sort of weight repetitively. I got 1 or 2 reps, and that's where I should have stopped, because that was my maximum pretty much. I went on and done 4 reps, still racked it, still had decent form, had a slight spot at the end. But afterwards, that's when my injury came up, because I wasn't used to handling that amount of weight for that amount of reps. I just pushed it. I did the bodybuilder thing, I can get 2 reps, and then I'll see how many more reps I can get. Whereas a strength athlete would say, well, I'm going for 2 reps on this set, and that's all I'm going to get. And they would build up from there. And I see this a lot with people. So the ego zone is where people are lifting too much weight, potentially sloppy form, although doesn't have to be sloppy form, but normally it is. And they're screaming loudly, and they're potentially not using a good range of motion, and banging the weights down afterwards. And generally this does result in an injury. And you'll see these people who are lifting these weights, and then they'll come back a couple of weeks later, why are you lifting half the weight? Or because my shoulder's injured, or because my knee's injured, or whatever. And that actually puts them out for potentially a long piece of time, but they don't learn from that. And what they do is they come back and try the same thing again and again. So gradually these injuries, which were just niggles, now become major injuries. And I'm sure you know someone who's done that. So don't become that person. Yes, it's good to lift a heavy weight from occasionally from time to time. I'm not saying don't do that, but just be mindful. If you're lifting a heavy weight to see what you can get, then make sure you've got some in the tank afterwards. Don't go to a maximum failure if you're doing that weight for the first time. If you, say for example, you've done a 100 kilo bench press, and you're looking to get 120 kilos, if you can get 1 or 2 at 120 with really good form, then stop that. Come back and try it again until you can get 5 or 6 with this 120 or whatever high weight you're doing. Don't try pushing the weight up and up again, because the body needs to condition to handling that sort of weight. With my own injuries, I pulled like a 280 deadlift, which was great for me at that time. And then the next day I went in and done this 180 kilo bench press. My body wasn't conditioned to do that sort of heavy strength training day after day. I was conditioned to do bodybuilding training, and my normal deadlift would be say 240, and my bench press would be normally 140. So I pushed the envelope massively because I was feeling good and everything else was going really well, but I wasn't conditioned for that sort of training. I broke my own rules by doing that sort of thing. So don't be that person. Be very mindful of what you're doing, because if you get an injury, and like myself, where I lost half the muscle on my right side, that is debilitating. That was my competitive career over. So don't do those sorts of things. And at the time, and the problem is, I'll say this, but you never know when is that time. You've got to have a spotter or a partner or someone saying, hold on, we did this last week and doing this week and trying for this many reps. Maybe you should be having a think about that. You know, and I thankfully have a very good training partner who says to me, hold on, you're pushing the envelope a little bit there. Even now when I'm doing my training, I still have that person who's saying to me, you know, don't do this, because you might be risking injury. And he's right, because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to build the most amount of muscle I possibly can. Do I give two hoots about how strong I am? No, not really, because I'm never going to be as strong as I was when I was competitive bodybuilding, when I was doing all those things to be at that level. I'll never be that strong. I'll never have a 180 incline bench again, which I used to do quite regularly. It's flat bench as well. I had the injury. I would never do sort of 220, 240 deadlifts anymore, because I just can't lift that sort of weight. So I'm not looking to get as strong as possible. So all I'm looking to do is maximize and get into what I call the progress zone. This is what we're going to talk about now. So the progress zone is where you're between about 40 to 80% of your 1 rep max, and you're doing a consistent amount of reps and consistent amount of sets. So the research that's been around recently for the last sort of 5 to 10 years is leaning towards this in terms of maximal muscle growth. Not talking about strength here, we're talking about muscle growth and getting more muscle coming on, which is what most people who watch this video are going to be looking for. What we want to be doing is making sure we're training with the right amount of volume, the weight, sets, reps, but also reducing the amount of injury. And this is what I also teach in my coaching. So what we're looking to do is between 40 to 80% of our 1 rep max. That's where we want to stay in for most of our sets. We want to be doing around about 7 to 12 reps. Now I do have training protocols, and if you downloaded my Vitamin T workout, the sample workouts you can get, you'll see that some of them are like 20 reps or whatever. That's absolutely fine. It's fine to be with 5 reps. It's fine to be with 20 reps occasionally. But where you want to be staying is sort of like, say, 7 to 12 reps. Normally on my programs, it'd be between 10 and 15 reps, because you want to fail around about that point. So 7 to 10 reps or 10 to 15 reps, and make sure that you're doing about 40 to 80% of your 1 rep max. Also, we want to be taking the muscle to near failure. Now, I used to say a lot that you have to get to failure in order to elicit muscle growth. There's some new research coming out now which is showing that that's potentially not required, which is great, because if you're training solo, it means you can do a bench press and get to what you would call, say, as many good reps as you can get without a spotter, and then rack it without needing a spotter. So as long as you're going to near failure or just before failure, that will elicit muscle growth as well, and that obviously is injury reducing. And we also want to be doing a certain amount of volume. So 1 set is potentially not going to be enough. We want to do about 3 to 4 sets in order to get that muscle to failure. But the first 2 sets, what I'd probably say is, go for like a warm-up set. So maybe you're in the comfort zone for that, where you're just warming up and getting the tendons warm. And then the last 2 sets should be the ones where you're really focusing on that 7 to 12 or 10 to 15 reps with around about 40 to 80% of your 1 rep max. Now obviously if you're getting to say 15 reps very comfortably, you need to start shifting that that weight scale so that you're doing more weight, so you're failing before 15 reps. I would say if you're doing more than 15 reps and not failing, you're either pushing for a really sort of high volume, and some of that stuff is in my training. But if you're not doing it intentionally, then you want to bring it back down. So make sure that your weight is one that you're failing before 15 reps, unless you're doing some specific high volume training, and there is justification for that as well, because you can grow from having a muscle pump, so you can grow from that as well. But I would say don't do that all the time. You don't have all your workouts, say 30-40 reps or something like that. That's just, you're going to be pushing more towards sort of endurance training for that. So those are the key points that you want to be thinking about when you're looking at muscle growth. And if you are following those points, it's very unlikely you're going to get injured. You're going to stay in the progress zone. You're going to reduce the risk of injury, because you're not lifting enough weight to be shifting onto, say, tendons or joints or anything else. You can comfortably handle that weight, but because you're getting to, say, the sort of 10 to 12 reps range, you feel as though you've done enough in that set in order to elicit muscle growth. Whereas if you're only doing 2 or 3 reps, sometimes you feel, I could do a bit more there. So, and remember, we're not looking for strength here. We're looking for muscle growth, not maxing out our strength. And it is also important to remember that by growing more muscle, you will build more strength, because if you've got more muscle fibers and more muscle density to lift with, as a result of that, you will get stronger. So, and a lot of my clients who I work with and people I've coached, we start off with this bodybuilding type training, and they report that they are getting stronger as a byproduct of that training. They get bigger, yes, they lose body fat, but then they're getting stronger because they have more muscle. But we haven't focused on strength as the main goal here. We're focused on building more muscle and losing body fat. And because they become more efficient machine, because they become this person who can lift more weights for more reps, what's then happened is their overall strength has gone up. But that's a byproduct of what we're doing, not as the main focus. So you will get stronger by doing this sort of training. You just won't get as strong as you potentially could be if you're training just for strength. And I don't do videos or programming just for strength. That's not my area of expertise, so I don't do that. If you want to look at that, go and look at a specific powerlifting or strength coach for that. I'm talking about bodybuilding. That's where my expertise lies, getting people bigger, fuller, with less body fat, and strength comes as a byproduct of that. So don't think you're not going to get strong by doing this training. You will. It'll just be a slower progression of that strength than you would if you're doing specific strength training. Now, if you were to stay in this progress zone for the max amount of time, and sometimes you will go into the ego zone because we just want to see what we can lift. I get that. I do that sometimes. But I'm very mindful that this is just to see what I can do for these couple of reps, and I don't push it all the way. I don't push it to maximum. If I can get 10 to 12 or 15 reps with, say, let's say 120 kilos, I will put another 5 kilos on and see what I can get with that, just to see. Now, if I can get, say, 5 or 6 reps, then that becomes what I'm aiming for my benchmark the next time. But I won't be thinking, oh, now I can do 5, now I'll do more, and I'll keep pushing the bar up in that one set. It's just to see what I can get so I can test myself against the next time. That won't be the majority of my workout. That'll be where I'm saying, well, let's see what I can get. I've got this comfortably. What can I get if I put more weight on? That's a natural part of bodybuilding progression. If we can get to that level of 10 to 15 reps of very good form, great. We know we're getting stronger. We're getting more efficient as a human being to lift weights. So let's add the weight on. That's a natural progression. That's not getting into the ego zone. But sometimes we will tip into that. We will be very much on that border where we're thinking, oh, what about this? What about this? Just make sure you have a word with yourself at that point and say, is this something that is going to build me more muscle, or is it increasing the risk of injury? And have a real good think about that. Do you need to do that today? If you've got to failure or near failure on most of your sets, do you need to do that where you're now fatigued and you're potentially not going to get that lift when, as you would when you were fresh? But maybe have a note of it, and next time come back and try it next time. Okay, I think covered everything on the video. Hopefully it's been helpful, not just a rant about my injuries and how it's scuppered my bodybuilding competition, but that is relevant to what we're talking about today. If you like the video, please give it a like, subscribe if you're not a subscription already, and leave a comment below. I will endeavour to reply to all comments if I can. And thanks for your time. Really do appreciate you taking time to listen to me or watch me, and have a great day, whatever you're doing. See you later.